Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm your host, Brian Scott. Today we're returning to the Psychiana series, and we are at Lesson 9. The Psychiana series, written by Frank B. Robinson, so far has been a dramatically different way of teaching the God law as he refers to it. He has his own personality in these writings and slowly reveals the proof of the God law and the way it works in each lesson, unveiling a little bit more each time with exercises and a variety of other things. Some people really find these lessons powerful when, over time, if you access them, each one will build upon itself. You don't need to necessarily listen to them in order. Each one is powerful, very much like a Neville Goddard lecture. I recommend each one, and they're a lot of fun to read. Advanced Course Number 1, Lesson 9, Psychiana, by Frank B. Robinson. Dear friend and student, I take pleasure in handing you Lesson Number 9. You've probably been taught that you were a fallen creature who was born in sin and live in iniquity, and other things along that order. This lesson will show you that you are no such thing. It will show you that instead of having fallen, man has steadily climbed from the lower to the higher. I want you to give a lot of time and thought to this lesson. And furthermore, I want you to actually put the God law to the test in your own life. And let me repeat that there does exist a spiritual power which you may contact and use in the attaining of every right desire of your heart. Stay quiet and grasp to the full the immense truths this lesson discloses, for they are immense truths. Sincerely, your friend and teacher, Frank B. Robinson. You will recall that in your last lesson we took a glimpse at the subject of the creation and fall of man. Among many other interesting things, we saw a little of the magnitude of the power behind creation. We saw that man has never fallen at all, but to the contrary, he has continually climbed up through the ages, and from the caveman species up to his present stage of development. So please get away from the idea that you were ever a fallen man or a lost sinner in any sense of the word. What sort of a creator would it be who would start a world rolling and populated by a race of guilty, lost, hell-deserving sinners? What sort of an intelligence would that be? Do you think that the story is true? Of course you don't, and neither do I. Instead of the mighty life principle placing man on the earth to fall into sin and to retrograde, reserving a place of eternal punishment for him in the future, the mighty God law, instead of holding a club over the heads of men and women, is trying to make them see something of the dynamic, unseen spiritual power that is at their disposal. That's what the God law is trying to do. And just as fast as man can assimilate the staggering fact of the existence and presence of this mighty God power, then just so fast will man continue to rise and climb to higher heights and nobler places than he has ever attained before. No matter what the vision may be, no matter how high we place it, there is always power enough in existence here and now to make that vision attainable. You cannot want or desire anything without first visualizing it. And you cannot visualize anything right and proper without attaining it if you use the mighty dynamic God law for that purpose. All down through the ages, step by step, just as fast as man could visualize, the tremendous God power has taken the human race by the hand, and very slowly, for man is a stubborn animal, has led man up to a higher vision. You look into the spiritual realm a little bit. You believe what I'm telling you about it. You venture just a tiny bit, and you find the spiritual God law works. Then you go just a little bit further, and there, as ever, you find this great unseen God law still awaiting you. Still it is beckoning you onto greater heights, and the only limitations on yourself are the limitations put there by you yourself. For you certainly cannot limit God, can you? Do you think for a moment that this unseen, dynamic spiritual law, which brought life to the earth in the first place, cannot or will not rise to the occasion or to the emergency? And I place no limitations there either. This great realm is above us and all around us. In fact, all creation is pervaded by an unseen dynamic spiritual power or law, whichever term you care to use. And this unseen dynamic power or law is God. Now, do you grasp that? It's revolutionary to be sure, but if you think this realm and this power do not exist, then try it out sometime and see. One Bible paragrapher said, "In him we live and move and have our being." And never was truer word than that ever spoken. My teaching takes that statement from the abstract realm and places it right where it belongs, in the material realm here and now. It may be all right for us to have a power in the sky that can do all sorts of things for us in the future. That may all be true, but what good does that do you and me now? It is here and now that we want God to operate, not after we are dead. And besides, how much more valuable to us will a God be who can and will and does operate here and now, making it possible for us, through using the God law, to accomplish whatever we want to accomplish? How much more reasonable is that than is the theory that after we die, then we shall have our desires in the glory land and other things on a similar order? I would not have it inferred that I want to destroy anyone's hope of a future realm, but I do want it understood, and understood plainly, that it is not true that the mighty Creator ordained that his power and his blessings and the knowledge of him are all reserved for beyond the tomb. No one can prove that there is any life beyond the tomb in the first place, and if the God idea is logical at all, and if there be such a God, which there is, then unless that power can actually and literally operate here and now, it is of no use to us. Some good Christians here will now tell me that they would not sacrifice their childhood teachings under any consideration. All right. Hang on to them. If they do any good, stick as close to them as you care to, but I shall warn you here, you might be wrong. It may be that scientific research will show you that the theories you are depending on are not quite true after all, and suppose they are not true, what then? You know it is quite possible that a man may be mistaken, and it is quite possible that an entire organization may be mistaken too, especially in the realm of religion, for a more superstitious realm never existed. Long before the Christian era, men and women could live as pagans in absolute security. But when the superstitious Christian religion came into vogue, then also came the peculiar Christian practice of burning men and women and little children alive at the stake. That cannot be denied, and such facts should be looked square in the face if the reasonable truth is to be discovered. At any rate, I'm looking them square in the face, and it is such facts as that one that caused me to look elsewhere than the present-day religious systems for the answer to the God proposition, and what a revelation I found. I saw very plainly that those who were presuming to direct our spiritual destinies were doing so on the authority of stories, which were pagan and heathenish in the extreme, and stories utterly devoid of truth. Then later I saw the first faint inkling of the light of God, and what a light it is. Just think for a moment, my student, of the existence of a God law so dynamic that all other laws or forces fade into insignificance beside it. Just think of the existence of a mighty spiritual power, a mighty God whose power in creating the world is here, at your disposal, here and now. Think of that. Is that too startling? Well, it isn't startling enough to express the profundity of the fact itself, for the law exists. That law is God, the only true God the world has ever known or ever will know. And with the law comes the method of putting the law into operation. And what a simple method it is. Had there never been any supernaturally revealed religion on earth, then the fact of the existence of God would automatically have been discovered. But now that supernaturally revealed religion has gotten hold of folks, it is going to take some little time to eradicate the radical tendencies inherent in man's mentality. For you cannot blot out the teachings of generations overnight. You cannot change a line of thought at once. It will take time, but the time is now, here, and the old globe is awaiting a new revelation from God. Well, it will have one, although not in the way the church is expected to come. It will never come by the return of Jesus Christ from the skies or anything on that order. But it will come through men and women actually and literally believing in the existence of the living God as an unseen spiritual power here and now. And that is the only way the revelation will come. We saw in a previous lesson that the very ether is full of emanations called cosmic rays. We saw the immense possibilities of this staggering fact. Recently, I received a letter asking the very direct question as to whether or not I believed that these cosmic rays were God. I shall not say here what I believe about that particular point, for it might hinder the understanding of God that you are going to receive before you finish your studies with me. For I want every single student without exception to see marvelously real fact of the present existence of this master intelligence, God, or as I call it, the God law. I want every student to know, and to know beyond a shadow of a doubt, that this mighty power exists. Whether the cosmic rays are God or not is aside from the point here. We do know that these cosmic rays exist. We do know that the fact of their existence proves the existence of at least electrical energy throughout the entire universe. We know also there is such a thing as directing one's thoughts along this line into what has heretofore been known as the great unknown. And with this realization in mind, we can very easily see the feasibility of directing our thoughts into this great realm on what might be called infinity. That is a fact. The subconscious mind theory is not the answer. This is a man-made theory arrived at by some quite popular and brilliant scientific men, but advanced science has disproven that theory. As science advances, it first accepts a theory, and then when another proven theory is found, it embraces it and discards the other one. But it ever changes, dealing always and ever with the facts as they are known to exist. The one who will never change his or her ideas to meet the advances of scientific and psychical research will stagnate and die. Yet we find them, though, still willing to hang to theories so old that they create an obnoxious odor whenever and wherever they are aired. No religion can well discard a lot of things handed down to it from the Dark Ages, and in the discarding of these things it may find God. They will never find Him in them, because what they teach does not exist and never did exist. There lies on my desk, as I write this, a letter from a Baptist preacher, and here's what he says in part. Your teachings are certainly dynamite to Orthodox religion, but I find myself accepting them and discarding the religion I have been taught from boyhood. That's fine, and I can tell him where there are thousands more who are discarding it. They are throwing away the future for the now. They're refusing to no longer take a chance on sacrificing their happiness, success, and health here and now on the theory that we'll get all these things in heaven. Many of them have suspected that heaven does not answer the story, and so they are looking for God here and now. And bless your soul, they are finding Him. They are becoming acquainted with the greatest spiritual, unseen, dynamic law the world has ever known. And finding this God law, they know now what is the truth of God. They find that the law satisfies. They find that it can and does do the work when the conditions governing the operations of the law are met. At this point in our studies, the question of suffering and that mythical monster sin enters the argument. And I deem it quite necessary at this point of our journey to get hold of Mr. Sin and take a look at him, to find out if we can just what he is and what he is not. This is necessary to an intelligent study of the lessons to come. And bear in mind, those of you who may be tempted to get in a little hurry, that you must learn the truths I am giving you slowly. Yesterday, a man wrote me asking me to send the lessons all at once. He stated that he was of sufficient mentality to grasp these supreme facts of life instantly. Well, perhaps he is, but if he has that sort of a mentality, the world surely would have heard of him, but it hasn't to date. And if you think for a moment that a cursory reading of these lessons, interesting though they are, will teach you these mighty truths of God, then let me assure you that you are much mistaken. You will have to actually put this God law to the test yourself in your own life before you will know whether it works or not. It won't do you any good to have me tell you that it exists and have you mentally agree with me. That will get you nowhere. But the actual contacting of the God law as the actual test of these truths will convince you, and very quickly too, that this God law exists and exists here and now for you. What is it you want? Well, believe me, you can have it if it is a right and proper thing through the God law, through the living God Spirit, but not by reading about it. You will have to actually do the things I tell you to do, and then you will know whether I know what I am talking about or not. But we shall have to progress, for I want to look into the story of Mr. Sin and see what we can discover about him. Here once more we shall deal with the subject as present-day religion handles it, and for the time being I shall quote their story, for as ever underneath the fable, underneath the myth, underneath the allegory, there lies the germ of a great spiritual truth. The religious heads haven't seen it yet. They will, though, and when the time comes, I think perhaps some of them will be honest enough to come into the limelight and tell us that they were mistaken in their theories. According to their story, the first two people created on this earth were responsible for the sin proposition. They were put into a garden and told not to do a certain thing. They were not to eat any fruit. It makes no difference what sort of a tree or bush it was, whether an apple tree or a gooseberry bush. The fact remains that this first created man and woman were put in this garden by God and told not to eat fruit. Fruit is good for us today, but evidently in that day it was not suited for the particular manufacture of their bodies. Else God would not have forbidden them to eat it. At any rate, into the garden came a snake, a talking snake, and the snake entered into a conversation with Adam and Eve, and he evidently had ideas of his own about the effects of the fruit, for he denied the story that God had told Adam and Eve, and did it in such an effective manner that he made his point, and God had to take second place with this talking snake in the matter of salesmanship. For the only two people on earth, fresh from the hand of God, paid more attention to this loquacious serpent than they did to the God who had just created them. They ate the fruit. So according to the Bible story, we plainly see it was our own ancestors way back yonder who, when they were enjoying the bliss of perfect communion with God, deliberately chose to throw it away and all the joys attendant with it. They deliberately threw away the liberty which comes from perfect communion with a perfect God, and by so doing they lost this communion and brought death, disease, sickness, and poverty not only to themselves but to the entire human race, you and me included. What a pity. But the result is here, though, and just because those two fresh from the hand of God ate fruit when God told them not to, you and I are under a terrible curse, which curse cannot be removed unless we go through certain experiences prescribed by certain religious organizations teaching this story. As a matter of fact, however, neither you nor me nor any other sane person ever really believes such a story as this one. Reason reigns supreme where this sort of a yarn is concerned, and even the super orthodox sometimes give away a little bit and question the truth of it. The big idea under it all, though, is the fact, or rather the theory, that this first created couple would not believe God. They showed their utter disregard for what God had told them, and incidentally insulted him by taking the word of a talking snake in the place of the word of the living God, the creator of the universe. Now watch closely here, for the story of the fall of man, even though it be pagan, myth, and allegory, which it undoubtedly is designed to teach that rank unbelief of God was the first cause of man's helpless and fallen condition. And at this point, if the religionists will discard the Garden of Eden and the talking snake story, I heartily agree with them. They will not be able to see it, but I do, though. And more than that, unbelief in the power of the mighty life spirit today is the very thing that is keeping men and women with their noses to the grindstone today. And furthermore, this unbelief or doubt of God is the only sin there is in the universe. For every sin in existence can be directly traceable to the great monster of sin or doubt of the power of the living God to do for us what it is we want done today, and not in the future at all. People doubt the existence of God, and I don't blame them either for doubting the existence of such a God as the present-day religionists teach. Not all do. I blame them, and for that matter, this whole story is a myth for such a God as that one never did exist. the mighty master intelligence behind the universe, did not need to resort to conversations with talking snakes. And any story that he did is a lie, and a 100% lie at that. But the fact that doubt of the life spirit itself being the cause of all sin cannot be questioned. Here today we have in existence a power so dynamic and so potent that it is able to take two little germs and in 9 months make a complete and superbly marvelous human being out of them, and is capable of doing that any day in the week and here and now. And yet men and women will not believe in the existence of this power, even though they are surrounded by it. And even though it brought them personally into being, they still doubt it. People write to me by the thousands telling me they are sick and tired of poverty, illness, etc. And they try this, and they try that. The most of them have discarded the church teachings long ago, and many of them take up with Christian Science. The supernaturally revealed religion story did not have anything to offer them, or stories on a par with the talking snake story. And being honest, these good folks, of course, are looking elsewhere for the truth. A good many of them are finding it too. But here they are on every hand, crying against this and crying that. This circumstance doesn't suit them, and neither does that circumstance. Their hearts are crying for the truth, bleeding for it, some of them. And just because they have been taught they could never know God until after they die, they are of all people the most miserable. They cannot and do not believe that this same God who held the conversation with the talking snake sent 1/3 of himself down to earth to be brutally murdered in order that those few who accept that story might be saved. Like any other reasoning mind, they do not believe that story. Neither do I. So they wander around and honestly, intelligently try to find the answer. And most of them find the further they get away from the supernaturalism, the more apt they are to find God. For if ever God were anything at all, he is a perfectly natural God, and one that can very easily be comprehended by the reason of a child. And never you forget that. For as a famous doubter once said, anything in religion that does not appeal to the mind of a child is not true, nor is it. This world is made up of human beings. Some are black, some are yellow, and some are white, while others are brown and others various colors. Now it must be a fact that a universal God must be a God who appeals to all nations and races, and one who can be understood by them all. This teaching that only one system of religion has the truth and all the rest are damned is an utterly false teaching, and the very brand of falsity is stamped on it by such a teaching. God as he exists, if there be a God, must need be such a God that every man of every nation can grasp him. And that is exactly the facts of the mighty life spirit as it exists. Rather a marvelous thought, is it not? Well, it's the truth. And when the conditions, the very simple conditions, governing the mighty unseen God law are complied with, it makes no difference whether it is a Chinaman who complied with them, or a South Sea Islander, or a good old-fashioned Yankee. You cannot put into play the conditions governing this mighty God law without receiving from that mighty law whatsoever things you desire. And please remember that. A universal God is the only sort of a God that will fit a universal race, and a universal God law is the only sort of spiritual power that race will accept. It will take so much paganism, it will take just so much supernaturally revealed religion, but it won't take too much, and it is taking very little of that anymore. And then the time will come when men and women will discard the whole thing if they can't get any satisfaction from it. And millions today have lost their faith in any God because of what has been taught them by professing religionists, who, by the way, teach a system of supernaturally revealed religion. So finding that this brand fails and does nothing tangible for them, now they miss the point by stating there is no God at all. And the professing religionists are alone responsible for this condition, no one else, but this is evidenced by the upward trend of evolution. John Calvin, being the founder of the Presbyterianism, persecuted Michael Servetist and was the cause of his being burned alive at the stake. And not 400 years ago either, but John Calvin founded one of the strongest Protestant systems of religion existent just the same. Would you want to follow today any system of religion founded by a man of that type? I don't think so, and while of course these differing structures have changed somewhat, yet essentially They are the same at heart, for they are founded on the superstitions such men as Calvin believed. These are facts. They may hurt the feelings of the good Presbyterians, but they still remain facts. And that is all I'm interested in, the facts. Naturally, I have a lot of energies among the Orthodox religionists. But that is but natural. The time is here when we must know the truth of God or go down to absolute oblivion, missing the greatest power the world has ever known. For over and above all present-day supernaturally revealed teaching, there exists, and there has ever existed, an unseen dynamic spiritual power so staggering in its immensity that it is almost unbelievable. And this power has been in existence all the while those professing religion have been vainly endeavoring to make people accept their foolish story. Outside of all that, there has always been this power. There's always been this God law, but unrecognized by the professors of religion because they believed that they had only God there is, when as a matter of fact, all they have is Yahweh or Jehovah, who never was more than a Jewish tribal god and who never had any existence at all for that matter, but this is the God the supernaturalists worship today. Just this morning came in a letter from a minister saying, "Can it be possible that there is a God power in existence that the church has never known? Can it be possible that we do not know God at all?" And my reply to that brother was that not only was it possible, but it is the very condition that now exists. And that is the reason people on the street smile when religion and church is mentioned. That is the reason the pews are empty and spasmodic revival tactics adopted in useless effort to stimulate trade. The reason goes deep. It has been hidden for a long time, but it's coming to light today, though, because men and women have made up their minds to find God. And when that happens, you may depend upon it, some man will arise to point the way. This is my mission in life, to point men and women to the existence of the most dynamic power this world has ever seen, the power of the God law. And are they accepting it? I think so. And if you could see my files, you would think so also, I assure you. And this is the power I'm slowly but surely leading you to find. Don't be in a hurry, for I must logically make every point along the journey plain to you. This teaching is quite revolutionary, and so I must explain why this God law has not been recognized before. And to those who believe Orthodox theology, may I say that the new vision of the God law coming to the earth will very effectively show up the hollow sham that has masqueraded for so long in the name of God. This is not a pity at all. It's the most blessed thing the world has ever seen. For you let the knowledge and the power of the life spirit once become universally known, and all this so-called sin proposition will very soon vanish away. This poverty business will go also, and as my students are rapidly finding out, they will know that this God law exists and exists here and now and is abundantly able to do for them whatsoever they cannot do for themselves. The fly crawling around on the ceiling is perfectly oblivious to the fact that it is a ceiling he is crawling on. He does not know that the ceiling is a part of what is called a room. Nor does he know, as they crawl around, that the room they are in is but one room in a house. Nor is the fly cognizant of the fact that the house is part of a block of houses. Nor does he know that the block is part of a street, and it does not know the street is part of a city. It thinks that all it sees is the whole of the world. And it is as far as that fly goes, for its vision is limited by its material senses. It does not know that the city is but one of thousands of cities making up a nation. It does not know that nations are many on this earth, nor does it know that nation flies at the throat of nation, and that every so often bloodshed tints the earth a deep crimson red, bloodshed that never would be had. There never had been any supernaturally revealed religion in the world. The fly does not know that, nor does it know that there is a sun or a moon or stars, and certainly it does not know there are planets and nebula millions and billions of miles away from the earth. All that fly knows is what it can see. It can see its immediate surroundings, and that is all. The human race is somewhat like that fly. And especially is this so of the religious phase of human life. And because there are things in existence which the religious eye could not see, it has immediately gone on the assumption that such things are reserved for after death, and has put a supernatural construction on everything it could not understand, and then buried and cast off the whole under the cloak of God in heaven. As a matter of fact, nothing is farther from the truth. But like the little fly, he is not conscious of the immensity of the universe. Neither are many people conscious of the majestic and invulnerable spiritual God law operating here and now for them. For if you please, try to grasp this picture this lesson has taught you. In your evening efforts, continue the same practices I have been giving you, and let the thought of what you desire go out into the great cosmic realm, for sooner or later it will find the great source of the law, and then will begin to manifest in the unseen realm. The very things you want to manifest here, they will begin to manifest in the heart of God, so to speak. Don't bother your head here about how these things will come. Just keep the thoughts and desires going out into the spiritual realm in a continual stream, and you will know someday whether or not there is a God law in existence, which unseen spiritual law is so dynamic that all other laws and forces fade into insignificance beside it. One word of caution here: keep continually on the expectant side of life. Look for the things you are needing to happen. I will not go into the manifestation of these things here, because another lesson deals with that subject. But keep these thoughts uppermost in your thought realm, and realize that your desire and the actual thing itself are but different ends of the same thing. Did you understand that last statement? Read it again and grasp the fact that your desire and the actual manifestation of the thing desired are in the spiritual realm, both the same thing. You are at the receiving end of it, while the God law is at the other end. This is as far as we shall go in this lesson. But don't forget to write me if everything is not clear. Don't anticipate, however, as many questions on your lips now will be answered in the forthcoming lessons. I shall be glad to hear of the changes that are coming to you, and also of the actual manifestations as you make them. Be as happy and as enthusiastic as you care to be over the changes which come to you, and don't try to control whatever joy comes to you. When that comes, that is the time to shout if you want to, for this feeling of supreme happiness is but an evidence of the actual presence of this mighty God law. Many of you will feel certain vibrations perhaps, but many more will not. They are marvelous to those who do experience them, but are not at all necessary, and if you do not receive evidence of the existence of the God law through these vibrations, you will receive it in some other way. And now, without the slightest semblance of religious superstition, may I leave you with my very kindest and heartfelt wishes. And until the next lesson, may I say to you, be strong in the power of the mighty life spirit. Cordially your friend, Frank B. Robinson. P.S. I am not emphasizing any special point to remember in this lesson, as the important point runs through all the material. To obtain a clear idea of the thought contained in this lesson, it should be read over a number of times. Examination questions for lesson number 9. These examination questions are for your benefit, and you should know the answers to them all. If you're not clear, read your lesson again and again until they are clear. 1. Does history support or contradict the story of the fall of man? 2. How far can one go in his use of the God law? 3. What will be the character of the new revelation? 4. To know whether or not the God law works, something more is necessary than to merely accept these lessons as true. 5. What is the great spiritual truth that lies underneath the story of the fall of man? 6. What are the conditions of a universal God? Are these conditions fulfilled by the God law? 7. For what purpose does this lesson use the illustration of a fly crawling on the ceiling? 8. Where will the thought of what you desire be manifested first? 9. What is meant by saying that your desire and the thing itself are both the same thing? 10. Who was John Calvin? By what act of cruelty was his life as a religious teacher discredited? 11. Is it necessary for one to receive vibrations as evidence of the existence of the God law? And 12. Upon what side of life does this lesson instruct to keep continually? And that concludes lesson 9 from the Psychiana teachings by Frank B. Robinson. We get one very important idea. As we move away from the supernatural, you must test the God law for it to become a part of your awareness. Something that Neville Goddard states, something that Joseph Murphy states, and I'm saying it as well. You don't need to have a faith that this thing exists out there somewhere without actual proof. You can get actual proof as long as you follow these exercises or any of the exercises on the podcast, connecting to the God law, sending out your ideas out into the cosmos, and attracting new thought ideas and new experiences back to you. As you follow these experiments, these exercises, you will start to see things happen. Is there anybody that is listening to this episode that has not seen anything happen? I want to know who you are. Let's talk about what's going on. How long have you been imagining? Are you imagining on a regular basis? Is it something you deeply desire? Is there a part of you that does not desire this thing that you deeply desire? Is there any conflict within you? When are you imagining? How often are you imagining? Are you imagining before you go to sleep and when you wake up? On the cusp of your sleep state in your subconscious. It's interesting, he questions the subconscious here, but I think that he might be talking about it in a different way. We will find out as we go through future lessons what he means by that. This is really just an explanation of the law. Frank Robinson treats it so preciously that he slowly unfolds it and makes the argument in this that you're not going to understand the law in one sitting. That it's all not going to come to you from one book. And that's why I've been releasing these lessons every 2 weeks. If you go back to these lessons and listen to them again, over time, your understanding of them grows in the proper manner as you connect to the God law, as you're finding the God law, as you find the God law, as you seem to feel it, as it expresses itself. He has made a very, very good argument that this God law goes beyond all the religions, that we are tainted by the religious superstitions that we've had in this world, and that these superstitions have pulled us away from the truth of this God law. But underlying these myths are real truths. As he explains with the Adam and Eve story, that the story is kind of ridiculous, but obviously it's going to be a sin in your life. If there is this God law and you're ignoring it, if you're ignoring this amazing power that brought you into existence, that makes the planets revolve around the sun, that makes the solar system revolve around the center of the galaxy, all these amazing forces at play are the same forces that we're trying to utilize when we use this God law. It is above all other laws. I've talked about these laws in the Neville Goddard lectures and Joseph Murphy lectures and a variety of different lectures and books that we've talked about. I just really enjoy Frank Robinson's way of teaching it, as if he's revealing a present for you on Christmas, slowly opening the wrapping paper and uncovering the box, removing the tape, understanding it, feeling it, believing it. And his explanation is fantastic. It's a lot of fun to read, and I'm excited to read these other lessons. Whenever I do lessons on the podcast, the later episodes don't appear to be as popular. So continue to watch these. At some point, if you guys stop, I might just combine these together. But even if I do, take these lessons individually at a time. We're going to continue to do this as long as you guys want to. And I'd love to get your opinions on how this has changed. If you've had any effects from the exercises that we've talked about, if you've seen any manifestations from it, if you had a better understanding of this God law from these teachings, please put them in the comments. Put a like on this video. And I'm sending out thoughts of love and joy to everybody using the God law, sending it out into the cosmos, attaching to the cosmic rays out there that are connected to you. And I'm sending you the greatest joy and greatest bliss and hoping that you are all happy and successful and prosperous, and that you get whatever it is that you truly desire. That is my life goal. Embrace every breath, embrace every moment. They're all wonderful gifts, and I want you to have the very best. And hopefully these sort of teachings can help you to have that. All episodes of The Reality Revolution can be found at therealityrevolution.com. And welcome to The Reality Revolution.